In the NBA, greatness usually starts in the dark. Empty gyms, brutal workouts, obsessive routines. Legends like Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, and LeBron James built their legacies by grinding in silence, lifting, running, fine-tuning every inch of their game long before tip-off. But what if I told you there was a superstar who defied all of that? A generational talent who hated working out. A 300-pound giant who rarely trained in the offseason. Yet when the lights came on, he bullied the league like no one else. Think Giannis is a monster in the paint? He was like Giannis, but on steroids. Teams didn't just try to stop him, they built rosters with 7-footers just to foul him. He didn't only overpower role players, he clashed with Hall of Famers. David Robinson, Hakeem Olajuwon, Patrick Ewing, Tim Duncan, Dikembe Mutombo, Yao Ming, like they were scrubs. Analysts call him the modern-day Wilt, a physical specimen with the athleticism of a guard and the IQ to match. That rare combo fueled a Hall of Fame career few centers could dream of. He was the original Superman before Dwight took that title. But he also left championships on the table, thanks in part to a lazy attitude toward training. His coach Phil Jackson once said, "Shaq could have been the greatest of all time if he had Michael Jordan's dedication to conditioning." Kobe Bryant echoed that same frustration.
He'd be the greatest of all time. I wish he was in the gym. I would have had 12 rings.
Sports writer Bill Simmons put it bluntly, Shaq is the college student who could have graduated at the top of the class, but partied his way to a 3.7 GPA. Jalen Rose added,
"He was the guy that could have been an A student, but he had a lot more fun being a B student."
And even Shaq owned it in classic fashion.
I never work out in the summer. Beat me up so much during the season, I was taking the summer off. Because what people don't understand, I only had to prepare for 2 people. Him and maybe David Robinson. Him or maybe a kid. So if it was like 20 cents I had to compete for, I admit I used to take all summer off and then just work my way into shape.
In 2019, he posted simply, "Damn, I was so lazy." Despite the missed workouts, despite the extra weight, despite the frustration from teammates and coaches, he still dominated. He still shattered backboards. He still won championships. This isn't a story about hard work. It's about raw power, once-in-a-generation dominance, and a legacy that still leaves fans asking, what if he actually tried? This is the story of the laziest GOAT who bullied the NBA for a decade. Shaq wasn't always the unstoppable monster you just heard about. In fact, growing up, he was awkward, even clumsy. To understand how he became a 300-pound tyrant in the paint, lazy off-seasons and all, you've got to go back to the beginning, in the streets of Newark, New Jersey.
I'm the most dominant center ever.
Before the league knew his name, before the dunks, the dominance, the dynasty, there was just a tall, awkward kid trying to find his place in the world. Shaquille Rashawn O'Neal was born on March 6, 1972 in Newark, New Jersey, to Lucille O'Neal and Joe Toney. His biological father, Joe, struggled with drug addiction and was sent to prison for drug possession when Shaq was still an infant. After his release, Toney chose not to return to his son's life. Instead, he relinquished his parental rights, opening the door for another man to step in. That man was Philip Arthur Harrison, a disciplined, no-nonsense Army sergeant who would become the true father figure in Shaq's life. Harrison brought structure, toughness, and a sense of identity, the kind of presence Shaq needed in a chaotic world. He loved and respected Harrison so deeply, he refused to call him a stepfather. Years later, on his 1994 rap album, Shaq Fu Da Return, Shaq made his feelings crystal clear. In the song Biological Didn't Bother, he rapped the line,
"Phil is my father, cause my biological didn't bother."
A direct message to the man who raised him and the one who didn't. Growing up in Newark wasn't easy. The neighborhood was rough and trouble was everywhere. But Shaq found refuge at the local Boys and Girls Club. "It gave me something to do," he said. "I just go there to shoot. I didn't even play on a team." Growing up, Shaq was no ordinary kid. He was bigger than everyone else's age, and that often got him into trouble. Because of his size, he was bullied and misunderstood. One incident nearly ended his basketball dreams for good.
So I'm beating this kid up, and I'm kicking this kid, and he has an epileptic seizure. It's just me and the kid out there, and he's on the ground shaking, and now I'm frightened because, uh-oh. So then a guy comes and he saves the kid. And, but after that, I go home, I get disciplined, my mother pulls me to the side and says, "You're too big and too strong, you can't ever do that again."
But the moment changed Shaq forever. From that day on, he decided he wouldn't be feared. Instead of fighting, he leaned into humor. He became the class clown, making people laugh, easing tension, and hiding his pain behind a smile. It was a defense mechanism, but it became a signature part of who he was. From his time in the NBA to his larger-than-life personality on Inside the NBA. As a kid, Shaq was a New Jersey Nets fan, but his true idol, Dr. J, Julius Erving. One defining moment came when Shaq and his father were sitting high up in the nosebleeds watching an NBA game together. From way up in the cheap seats, he witnessed greatness. Dr. J flying baseline for one of his iconic plays. That moment hit different. Shaq looked down at the court and knew this is what he wanted to do. Not just play basketball, but dominate it, inspire, soar, just like Dr. J. Because of Harrison's military career, the family moved constantly. One of those stops was a U.S. Army base in Wildflecken, West Germany, and it would change everything. At just 13 years old and already towering over most adults, Shaq caught the eye of LSU head coach Dale Brown, who was visiting the base to run a basketball clinic. Coach Brown was stunned by the teenager's size. "I'll tell you what I'll do, soldier," Brown said. "When I get back to Baton Rouge, I'll send you a weight training program. How many years have you been in the service?" Shaq replied, "I'm not in the service. I'm only 13. Brown's eyes widened. "Well, son," he said, "I'd like to meet your parents." From that day forward, Brown kept in touch with Shaq's family, sending training regimens, checking in regularly, and planting the seed that would eventually lead O'Neal to LSU. But life in Germany wasn't exactly the start of a fairy tale. "I tried out for the high school basketball team on the base in Germany. I got cut," Shaq recalled. "I was probably 6'8", but they didn't care. There was another guy, Dwayne Clark, same size as me, but way better. He could dunk, hit fadeaways, dribble. He used to laugh at me, fake me out, and go right around me like I wasn't even there. That guy made me look silly." When the family returned to the U.S., they settled in San Antonio, Texas, where Shaq enrolled at Robert G. Cole High School. At the time, no one knew who he was. He wasn't a child prodigy like LeBron James or even Lonzo Ball. There were no cameras, no hype. In fact, Shaq was cut from the high school team as a freshman. He didn't even try out as a sophomore. By his own admission, he was just too lazy. But then came another turning point. Shaq met Ford McMurtry, a former assistant coach at the high school who had just started a new team on the base. McMurtry saw something in Shaq that others didn't. He invited him to join, and more importantly, he believed in him. McMurtry helped rebuild Shaq from the ground up, improving his conditioning, sharpening his footwork, and most importantly, restoring his confidence. He was patient when Shaq stumbled and relentless when he saw progress. By his junior year, everything clicked. Shaq had transformed into an unstoppable force, anchoring Cole High to a staggering 68-1 record over his final 2 seasons. As a senior, Shaq led his team to a perfect 36-0 season, capping it off with the school's first ever state championship. He was flat out dominant, averaging 31 points, 22 rebounds, and 6 assists per game. Even more jaw-dropping, he grabbed 791 rebounds that season, a Texas high school record that still stands today. On defense, he was just as terrifying, averaging nearly 9 blocks per game and altering countless others with his sheer presence. In one legendary performance, Shaq delivered a near mythical stat line: 26 points, 36 rebounds, and 26 blocks. A 25-25-25 game that hasn't been replicated since a certain guy named Wilt. But even then, dominance didn't come easy. Despite his size, Shaq was known for playing soft, trying finesse moves instead of using his power. That all changed during a high school game when he tried to imitate Magic Johnson.
I finger roll and miss. My father walks on the court in his uniform, looking sharp, shoes shine. Call a timeout. Dad, we in the middle of the game. Call a timeout. Yes, sir. So he takes me outside. What are you doing? And I'm a high school All-American, so I'm starting to feel myself get cool. Yo, man, I'm working on my doctor. Whoosh, smack in front of everybody. Ain't no Dr. J, be Shaq. So now, because remember, when you were the drill sergeant, you're not allowed to cry. And I'm pissed. So now I said, okay, this is what you want me to do? So I just started dunking.
That was the turning point. From that day on, Shaq stopped trying to finesse his way around defenders. He played with fury, with force. Every dunk became a statement, not just to score, but to intimidate, to tear the rim down. And he did. In high school alone, he shattered backboards and bent rims, setting the tone for the destruction he'd unleash in the NBA. By the time he arrived at LSU, Shaq was already a force of nature. But offensively, he was still raw. His go-to move in the more competitive college game? Dunking. And not much else. Defensively, though, he was a menace from day one, averaging 3.6 blocks per game as a freshman and anchoring the paint with pure intimidation. That summer, everything changed. Shaq spent the offseason training with two Hall of Fame legends, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Bill Walton. Under their guidance, he added key tools to his arsenal: a turnaround jumper, a reliable jump hook, and, just as important, proper footwork. With those new skills complementing his brute strength, his game hit another level. And by his sophomore year, Shaq wasn't just a dominant athlete. He was becoming a complete big man. In his sophomore season, Shaq put up the best numbers of his college career, averaging 27.6 points, 14.7 rebounds, and 5 blocks per game. Shaq formed a towering frontcourt duo with fellow big man Stanley Roberts, and together, they became one of the most feared tandems in college basketball. But despite all the talent and hype, tournament success never came. LSU struggled to make deep runs in the NCAA tournament, a frustrating contrast to Shaq's individual dominance. Still, Shaq did his part. He recorded a double-double in 5 NCAA tournament games, including a monster performance in his final college appearance: 36 points, 12 rebounds, and 5 blocks against Bobby Knight's Indiana Hoosiers. A year earlier, he dropped 27 points, 16 rebounds, and 5 blocks against UConn. And in 1992, he opened the tournament with a triple-double: 26 points, 13 rebounds, and 11 blocks against BYU. Over his 3 seasons at LSU, Shaq was a force of nature, averaging 21.6 points, 13.5 rebounds, and 4.6 blocks per game. He was named SEC Player of the Year in both 1991 and 1992, and earned consensus first-team All-American honors those same seasons. Shaq left LSU holding a stack of records, the kind that would make even Wilt Chamberlain crack a smile. He led the nation in rebounds, 14.7, and blocks, 5.3, and became the first player in LSU history to record back-to-back triple-doubles. He dropped 53 points in LSU's Pete Maravich Assembly Center without hitting a single three-pointer. Shaq also set the school record for blocks in a game, 12. In a season, 157, and in a career, 412. And on college basketball's biggest stage, he delivered 2, swatting 11 shots in a single NCAA tournament game, the most in tournament history, and the list goes on. This dominance made Shaq the consensus #1 overall pick in a loaded draft class that included names like Alonzo Mourning, Latrell Sprewell, Christian Laettner, and Jimmy Jackson. The NBA was waiting, and it had no idea what was coming. Despite his lack of NCAA tournament success, Shaquille O'Neal was selected first overall in the 1992 NBA draft by the Orlando Magic, chosen ahead of Georgetown's Alonzo Mourning and NCAA champion Christian Laettner. From the moment he stepped on an NBA court, there was no doubt Shaq was a game changer. Standing 7'1" and weighing 301 pounds, he was an unstoppable force, a wrecking ball with the agility of a guard. In his rookie season, he averaged 23.4 points, 13.9 rebounds, and 3.5 blocks per game, earning Rookie of the Year honors with ease. And he didn't just put up numbers, he broke the league. Shaq shattered multiple backboards that season, prompting the NBA to reinforce its rims league-wide and change the rules. More importantly, he resurrected a franchise. The Magic had finished 21-61 the year before. With Shaq, they jumped to a 41-41 record, a 20-win improvement overnight. They narrowly missed the playoffs, losing a tiebreaker to the Indiana Pacers, but the message was clear. A new era had begun. Orlando Shaq was a physical specimen, pure muscle, unmatched agility, and raw power. This was his athletic peak when he played at his most optimal weight. Reports say he weighed around 294 pounds at LSU, and by the time he entered the NBA, he'd climbed to 301. all of it weaponized. He bulldozed defenders. He didn't just shatter backboards, he brought down entire stanchions. Nothing about him was normal. Then against all odds, the Magic struck gold again. With just a 1.5% chance, they won the draft lottery for the second straight year. They selected Michigan Fab Five star Chris Webber.
With the first pick in the 1993 NBA draft, the Orlando Magic select Chris Webber,
but traded him on draft night to the Golden State Warriors for Memphis standout Anthony Penny Hardaway.
Orlando has traded the draft rights to Chris Webber to Golden State in exchange for the draft rights to Anthony Hardaway and 3 future first-round draft picks.
A move pushed by Shaq himself after the two built chemistry while filming the movie Blue Chips. The Shaq and Penny era had officially begun. In Shaq's second season, the Magic took another leap, finishing 50-32 and clinching the 4th seed in the East, marking the franchise's first ever playoff appearance. But the postseason stage was unforgiving. Orlando was swept in the first round by the Indiana Pacers. Shaq averaged 20.3 points, 13.3 rebounds, and 3 blocks per game. Solid numbers, but noticeably below his regular season average of 29.3 points. The early exit was a wake-up call. Dominance in the regular season was one thing. Playoff success, that was another challenge entirely. Everything came together for the Orlando Magic in the 1994-95 season. They signed former Chicago Bulls stalwart Horace Grant to bolster their front court. Michael Jordan was still retired playing baseball. Then the East was wide open, and Shaq was dominant in his 3rd season, leading the league in scoring, averaging 29.3 points, 11.4 rebounds, and 2.4 blocks per game. His rebounding and blocks were slightly down from the previous season, but that can be attributed to the presence of Horace Grant. Nonetheless, Shaq's dominance was brutal, almost primal. He overpowered his opponents, wedging defenders into the lane, grabbing offensive rebounds, and bullying grown men. The Orlando Magic finished the regular season 57-25, 7 games better than the year before, and claimed the top seed in the Eastern Conference. All signs pointed to an epic clash with the Chicago Bulls, led by a freshly unretired Michael Jordan, who played the last 17 games of the season. Orlando took care of business in the first round, dispatching the Boston Celtics, led by a 35-year-old Dominique Wilkins, in just 4 games. That set up a highly anticipated second-round matchup with the Bulls. But despite being the number 1 seed, the Magic weren't favored. Chicago had MJ, and for most experts, that was all that mattered. But the series was much closer than the 4-2 final would suggest. The Chicago Bulls had a golden opportunity to steal Game 1 on the road, if they could just run out the clock. With Michael Jordan bringing the ball up against pressure from Nick Anderson, disaster struck. In one of the most iconic moments in NBA playoff history, Anderson stripped the ball from Jordan and started a fast break that ended with a Horace Grant dunk, sealing the game for Orlando.
Crowd that was picked off by the Bulls, and Jordan spinning his way against Anderson.
In Game 6, with the Bulls at home and trailing the series 3-2, they led by 8 points with under 3 minutes remaining, poised to force a Game 7. But the young Magic stayed composed down the stretch. Nick Anderson hit 2 clutch shots to close the gap. Jordan, usually automatic in the clutch, airballed a turnaround jumper, perhaps fatigued since he wasn't in basketball shape. Luke Longley followed with a missed layup off a pass from MJ. And after a Dennis Scott free throw split, Jordan had one last chance, but threw a costly turnover while trying to feed Longley. The Magic closed out Chicago in 6 and advanced to the Eastern Conference Finals in a showdown against another future Hall of Famer, Reggie Miller. It was a grueling 7-game series where every home team won. Shaq, Penny, and the Orlando Magic blew out the Pacers on their home court, advancing the Orlando Magic to the NBA Finals for the first time in franchise history. There, they were heavily favored against the 6th-seeded Houston Rockets. Early in Game 1 of the NBA Finals, the Orlando Magic flexed their speed, size, and athleticism, racing out to an 18-point lead in the first half.
It is now an 18-point Orlando lead.
But the defending champion Houston Rockets, a veteran-laden squad led by Hakeem Olajuwon and Clyde Drexler, weren't rattled. Even with Olajuwon battling foul trouble, Orlando couldn't put them away. The second half turned into a back-and-forth battle. Both teams traded runs, momentum swung with every possession. It was anyone's game down the stretch. With just over a minute left, Orlando looked ready to take control. Shaq hit a soft hook over Olajuwon to put the Magic up 3. Then, after a defensive stop, they had a chance to extend the lead to 5. They came up empty, but grabbed 2 huge offensive rebounds, forcing Houston to foul Nick Anderson with 10 seconds remaining. All he needed was one free throw to ice the game. He missed both. But Anderson got his own rebound and was fouled again. Redemption at the line, 7 seconds left. Make one, and the Magic are up by 4. Game over, in theory. He missed both. Again. Up 3 with 5 seconds left. Orlando still just needed one stop. Then came the dagger. Kenny Smith, yes, the same Kenny from NBA on TNT, shook his defender with a pump fake and buried a clutch 3 to tie the game. In overtime, the Rockets showed the heart of champions. Robert Horry knocked down 2 threes. Olajuwon protected the rim. And after Dennis Scott tied the game with a 3 of his own, Hakeem tipped in the game winner. Houston stole Game 1 on Orlando's home floor, 120-118. In Game 2, Hakeem Olajuwon dominated the matchup against Shaq, scoring 22 points and controlling the paint on both ends. The Rockets stormed to a 22-point halftime lead and never looked back, taking a commanding 2-0 series lead and crushing Orlando's hopes of a finals comeback. The series was effectively over. Back in Houston, the Rockets closed the door, winning Games 3 and 4 to complete the sweep. It capped off one of the most improbable playoff runs in NBA history. Houston not only repeated as champions, they did it as a 6th seed, the lowest seed to ever win an NBA title. Shaq didn't disappoint in his first finals stint, averaging 28 points, 12.5 rebounds, 6.3 assists, and 2.5 blocks per game. But he faced a prime Hakeem Olajuwon, who put up 32.8 points, 11.5 rebounds, 5.5 assists, and 2 blocks per game on his way to a second Finals MVP trophy. The following season, Shaq and the Magic came back strong, winning 60 games, which would have clinched the number 1 seed in most seasons. But that was the same season Chicago won a then-record 72 games. Shaq's numbers took a slight dip from the previous season, averaging 26.6 points, 11 rebounds, and 2.1 blocks per game.
However, this was the first season in Shaquille O'Neal's career where he missed a significant chunk of time, most of it due to a fractured right thumb suffered during the preseason. In his absence, Penny Hardaway stepped up and led the Magic to a 17-5 record over the first 22 games, helping stabilize the team and keep them competitive while their franchise center recovered. Orlando took care of business in the first 2 rounds, cruising past overmatched opponents. They beat the Detroit Pistons, led by a young Grant Hill and Allen Houston, 3-0 in the opening round. Then they dispatched the Atlanta Hawks, led by Steve Smith, 4-1 in the semifinals. That set up a high-stakes rematch in the Eastern Conference Finals against Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls, hungry for revenge after last year's humiliation. Michael Jordan was on a mission to humble the young Orlando Magic, and he did exactly that. The Bulls swept the Magic in 4 games, finishing the job with Jordan dropping 45 points in Game 4 on the road against a desperate Orlando team fighting to stay alive. It was MJ's not-so-subtle response to Nick Anderson's infamous shot from the year before. 45 isn't 23. MJ took it personally, and the Magic paid the price. Not only were they swept by the Bulls, that Game 4 loss marked Shaq's final game in an Orlando Magic uniform.
During the 1996 offseason, Shaquille O'Neal became the league's biggest free agent, a true franchise-altering superstar. While the market featured all-star names like Alonzo Mourning, Gary Payton, Juwan Howard, Allen Houston, and Reggie Miller, Shaq was the crown jewel. You'd think the Orlando Magic would back up the Brinks truck to keep him in Disney World, but that's not what happened. As players like Juwan Howard and Alonzo Mourning signed $100 million deals, many assumed Shaq would command even more. But instead of locking him up, the Magic tried to gain leverage.
publicly questioning his rebounding and defense. This, despite Shaq averaging over 12 rebounds and 2 blocks per game across his 4 years in Orlando. Their initial offer? $54 million over 4 years, far below his asking price of $20 million per season, and well short of the deals Howard and Mourning received from Washington and Miami. While the U.S. Olympic basketball team was training in Orlando, the Orlando Sentinel published 2 controversial polls, both of which added fuel to the fire. The first asked whether the Magic should fire head coach Bryant Hill if that was one of Shaq's conditions for returning. 82% said no. Shaq had long clashed with Hill, once saying the team just didn't respect him. The second poll asked fans whether Shaq was worth $115 million. According to NBA insider Jackie McMullen, 91% of over 5,000 respondents said no. To make matters worse, the results were plastered on a billboard, visible from the window of Shaq's mother's office. The message was loud and clear. Orlando wasn't backing him. Behind the scenes, more tension was brewing. Shaq had learned that Penny Hardaway, his co-star in Orlando, considered himself the face of the franchise, and reportedly didn't want Shaq earning more money than him. Even his Olympic teammates took notice, teasing him about the polls and the public backlash. Shaq later said it felt like being a big fish in a dried-up pond. The poll reportedly pushed him over the edge. Even with Florida's lack of state income tax, Shaq felt disrespected. He was tired of negotiating, tired of feeling underappreciated. This time, he didn't want to use the Lakers as leverage. He was ready to walk.
Meanwhile, in Los Angeles, Jerry West was playing chess. The Lakers were quietly clearing cap space to make a run at Shaq. West traded Vlade Divac and his $8 million salary to the Charlotte Hornets for the draft rights to a high school phenom, Kobe Bryant. The move not only opened up cap room, it secured the guard who would one day help Shaq form a dynasty. The Lakers' initial offer was a 7-year, $95 million deal with an opt-out clause after the 3rd year. Exactly what Shaq was looking for. Orlando responded with a late counter, $64 million over 4 years, or $109 million over 7, but with an opt-out after the 4th year, not the 3rd as Shaq had requested. Then Los Angeles made their final move. After trading George Lynch and Anthony Peeler to clear more cap space, they increased their offer to $120 million. Orlando, scrambling to keep up, tried to sweeten its deal with improved cash flow. But whatever leverage they thought they had was gone, if it ever existed at all. What they didn't account for was a sudden shift in the rules. Back in 1992, when Shaq signed his 7-year, $39.9 million rookie contract, players were typically restricted free agents after their first deal, meaning teams could match any outside offer to retain them. At the time, it took 2 completed contracts and at least 4 years of service to become fully unrestricted. But the 1995 collective bargaining agreement changed everything. In a unique twist, the CBA eliminated restricted free agency for that offseason only, making Shaq an unrestricted free agent after just 1 contract. For the first and only time in the salary cap era, a star of his caliber could walk away, no strings attached. And Orlando wasn't ready for it. They misread the landscape, underestimated Shaq's market value, and fumbled the negotiation. By then, it was too late. Just days before the start of the Olympics, the decision became official. A press conference was held. The deal was announced. Shaquille O'Neal was headed to Los Angeles, and the NBA would never be the same.
Shaq bought into Jerry West's vision, a legacy of dominant Lakers big men, Mikan, Wilt, Kareem, and now Shaq. Plus, Los Angeles offered what he craved, a massive market, a global spotlight, and the platform to become more than just a basketball star. Orlando's hesitation proved costly. They went from title contenders to lottery dwellers almost overnight, and with Penny Hardaway later succumbing to knee injuries that cut his prime short, the Magic faded into irrelevance. They wouldn't return to prominence until another Superman arrived, more than a decade later, to lead them on an unexpected finals run of their own. With Shaq now in Los Angeles, the Lakers finally had the dominant big man they'd been searching for, someone to build around. While the team only improved by a few wins from the previous season, O'Neal's presence instantly elevated them to contender status. The Lakers had a solid 1996 regular season, finishing 53-29 and second in the Pacific Division. The roster featured a mix of veterans, a young Nick Van Exel, and the return of Magic Johnson, who played the final 32 games at age 36. But behind the scenes, tension brewed. There were locker room issues over playing time. Magic wasn't happy with Del Harris's offense. The chemistry just wasn't there. In the first round of the playoffs, the Lakers lost to the defending champion Houston Rockets 3-1. After the series, Magic Johnson announced his second and final retirement. Shaq's early years in LA were a mixed bag. He put up monster numbers, averaging 26.9 points, 11.5 rebounds, and 2.3 blocks per game. But the Lakers couldn't break through in the West. In the 1997 playoffs, they were eliminated in the second round by the Utah Jazz in 5 games. The following season, they made it to the Western Conference Finals, only to be swept by the Jazz again. After back-to-back postseason disappointments, the Lakers front office made changes. They traded Nick Van Exel to the Denver Nuggets for Tony Battie and rookie guard Tyronn Lue. They also dealt starting center Eldon Campbell and sharpshooter Eddie Jones to the Charlotte Hornets for Glenn Rice, a move designed to give Shaq more perimeter shooting. The trade also opened up playing time for a rapidly improving Kobe Bryant, who was ready for a larger role in the offense.
In the lockout-shortened 1998-99 season, the Lakers finished with a 31-19 record, but they were again swept in the postseason, this time at the hands of the eventual champions San Antonio Spurs. When Shaquille O'Neal was drafted by the Orlando Magic in 1992, he weighed just 294 pounds, 6 pounds shy of 300. This was the skinny version of Shaq. In Orlando, he moved like a mutant gazelle, effortlessly galloping down the court in a way no man over 7 feet tall ever should. Later in his career, offenses had to slow down just so Shaq could catch up. But in those early years, it was his teammates who struggled to keep pace. He could dribble coast to coast, rise for absurd alley-oops, and spin in the post like the Tasmanian devil. But after signing with the Los Angeles Lakers in 1996, Shaq's body began to change. It started gradually. Broader shoulders, thicker frame, a natural evolution for a man taking a nightly pounding from fellow 7-footers like Arvydas Sabonis and Luke Longley. To absorb that kind of punishment, Shaq decided he needed to bulk up. Big men were constantly grabbing, shoving, and doing anything they could to prevent him from dunking. But unlike chiseled specimens like Karl Malone or David Robinson, Shaq's added weight didn't come from a strict regimen. His diet and training habits, or lack thereof, played just as big a role as the physical battles in the paint.
When I was playing, I was a burger and bread eater. And you can't really do that every day if you're not getting exercise.
Shaq told Men's Health in 2012. O'Neal also had a reputation for spending his summers anywhere but in the gym, often showing up to training camp out of shape and using the regular season to get back into form. This frustrated coaches and teammates, most notably Phil Jackson. In the ESPN documentary, This Magic Moment, which recounted his time in Orlando, Shaq admitted he preferred spending summers relaxing with family rather than grinding through off-season workouts. Still, during the early years in LA, that lack of discipline hadn't caught up to him. In fact, it may have fueled his dominance. By the 1999-2000 season, everything clicked. For Shaq, and for the Lakers. He was healthy, missing only 2 games all year, and led the team in scoring, rebounding, and blocked shots en route to his only MVP award, a near-unanimous selection. He also finished second in Defensive Player of the Year voting, behind Alonzo Mourning, signaling a renewed commitment on that end of the floor. Meanwhile, Kobe Bryant was blossoming into a star of his own, the team's second leading scorer and a dynamic perimeter threat to complement Shaq's dominance in the paint. The Lakers made a pivotal change on the sidelines too, hiring Phil Jackson, the Zen master himself, to replace Del Harris.
Armed with 6 rings from his time with the Chicago Bulls, Jackson brought the triangle offense, a system built to leverage Shaq's post presence while managing egos behind the scenes. They also signed Ron Harper, another Bulls veteran and part of Jordan's second three-peat, to provide championship pedigree and locker room leadership. Exactly what a young Kobe and a rising Lakers team needed to get over the hump. The result? A league-best 67-15 record. Shaq was unstoppable. Kobe was blossoming into one of the NBA's best shooting guards, and the Lakers looked like true title contenders. But the postseason wasn't a smooth ride. In the first round, they needed 5 tough games to eliminate the up-and-coming Sacramento Kings, led by Chris Webber and featuring young talent like Jason Williams and Peja Stojakovic. In the second round, they dispatched the Phoenix Suns, led by young Jason Kidd and Shaq's former teammate Penny Hardaway, in another 5-game series. However, things got tougher in the Western Conference Finals, where the Portland Trail Blazers were waiting. This team wasn't just good, it was stacked. Leading the charge was Scottie Pippen, a 6-time champion with the Chicago Bulls, now chasing a 7th ring in Portland. Rasheed Wallace, the fiery and skilled power forward, was a matchup nightmare for the Lakers. Steve Smith, the former Atlanta Hawks star, gave Portland a dependable scoring option to complement Rasheed Wallace's interior dominance and Scottie Pippen's all-around brilliance. Arvydas Sabonis, a European legend who entered the NBA in his 30s, still possessed the footwork, vision, and shooting touch to make an impact. And the supporting cast was loaded. Bonzi Wells, Detlef Schrempf, Damon Stoudemire, and a young Jermaine O'Neal. After dominating the Blazers in Game 1, the Lakers were humbled in Game 2, suffering a 31-point blowout at home. But they bounced back strong, winning Games 3 and 4 on the road to take a commanding 3-1 series lead. Just when it looked like the series was over, Portland responded. Behind stifling defense and Scottie Pippen's efficient scoring, the Blazers took Game 5 despite a dominant 30-point, 20-rebound performance from Shaq. Back in Portland for Game 6, the Lakers had a chance to close it out. But once again, the Blazers rose to the occasion. They held Shaq to just 17 points, while Steve Smith kept pace with Kobe Bryant, scoring 26. And a surprise spark came from young Bonzi Wells, who added 20 of his own to force a decisive Game 7. Everything was on the line. Shaq and Kobe, 1 win away from their first finals appearance. Portland, 1 win away from completing one of the greatest comebacks and upsets in NBA playoff history. Some would argue this was the real NBA Finals, a clash of titans, with the winner expected to handle the Indiana Pacers, who had emerged from the East. Game 7 started tight. Midway through the third quarter, a 3-point play by Glenn Rice gave the Lakers a 1-point lead with 6:20 left. Then Portland punched back, hard. Steve Smith sparked a personal 7-point run to swing the momentum, and the Blazers eventually built a 16-point lead after Scottie Pippen drilled a tough 3 off the dribble. On the inside, Arvydas Sabonis and Rasheed Wallace made life miserable for Shaq. Their size, length, and physicality kept him scoreless in the third quarter. A rare feat. The Lakers were reeling. But then came an unlikely hero, Brian Shaw. The former Shaq teammate from Orlando hit a banked-in 3 late in the third to stop the bleeding. Then he caught fire in the fourth, knocking down several clutch threes, including one that tied the game at 75 with just under 4 minutes to play. Robert Horry, a proven playoff performer from Houston's back-to-back title runs, added a huge 3 of his own to help fuel the comeback. Meanwhile, Portland's offense collapsed. They missed 12 of 13 shots during a brutal cold stretch that opened the door for the Lakers. To make matters worse, Sabonis fouled out, robbing the Blazers of their best option to body up Shaq. Despite his struggles from the line, Shaq hit 2 clutch free throws to tie the game at 77 with under 3 minutes left. Then, after a Brian Grant miss, he hit a go-ahead turnaround jumper to give the Lakers a 2-point lead. Rasheed Wallace tied it on a goaltending call, but Kobe Bryant answered with 2 free throws to reclaim the lead. On the next possession, Wallace, a 70% foul shooter, had a chance to tie the game again. He missed both. Then came another big shot. Kobe, with Scottie Pippen guarding him, pulled up and drilled a jumper to push the lead to 4. After another Pippen miss, Kobe crossed him over right to left and lobbed it to Shaq for a thunderous alley-oop, one of the most iconic plays in NBA history.
The Lakers have 2. Bryant to Shaq!
That made it a 6-point game and sealed the win. The Lakers were headed to the finals. Indiana awaited. But the game wasn't without controversy. Steve Smith appeared to get hit hard by Shaq on a late drive, a no call that frustrated the Blazers. Had the whistle blown, things might have played out differently, especially since Kobe would go on to miss 2 free throws on the next possession. But the call never came. The Lakers advanced, and Portland was left stunned. The Indiana Pacers, led by Reggie Miller and Jalen Rose, had finally broken through to the NBA Finals. Underdogs on paper, they weren't intimidated by Shaq's Lakers. Alongside their 2 stars, Indiana had 7'4" center Rick Smits, who, on occasion, could give Shaq trouble with his soft touch and towering frame. Veteran point guard Mark Jackson was another key piece, a floor general who helped free up Miller off screens and provided steady leadership. But none of it was enough. Shaq dominated the series from the opening tip, averaging a staggering 38 points, 16.7 rebounds, and 2.7 blocks per game against an overmatched Pacers front line that had no answer for his size and strength. The Lakers protected home court in games 1 and 2. Indiana responded in Game 3 with a much-needed win, and Game 4 turned into an instant classic. The lead swung back and forth throughout, with both teams trading big shots. Sam Perkins drilled a clutch three-pointer to send the game to overtime after Shaq missed a potential game winner at the buzzer. In OT, the Lakers struck first. Robert Horry knocked down a baseline jumper, then followed it up with a putback dunk to give LA a 4-point edge. But then trouble hit. Shaq fouled out with 2 minutes 33 left. With their superstar on the bench, the Lakers' title hopes seemed to hang in the balance. That's when Kobe Bryant delivered his first truly iconic finals moment.
Despite playing on a bum ankle, he scored crucial baskets down the stretch, 2 clutch jumpers and a putback, to carry the Lakers to a 3-1 series lead. It was Kobe's coming out party on the biggest stage, a performance that hinted at the legend he would become. The Pacers fought hard, pushing the series to 6 games, but the Lakers closed it out at home. It was tight, but Shaq and Kobe hit timely shots to seal the deal and win their first championship together. This series marked the absolute peak of Shaquille O'Neal's dominance. Indiana simply had no answer. Shaq walked away with his first NBA championship and his first Finals MVP, and the dynasty was just beginning. Trouble began to brew the following season. O'Neal missed 8 games due to various foot injuries, including a nagging toe issue that would continue to bother him in the years ahead. He sat out the All-Star game to rest and rehab, but his production never dipped. Shaq maintained MVP-level numbers, averaging 28.7 points, 12.7 rebounds, and 2.8 blocks per game, as the Lakers cruised to a 56-26 record, second in the Western Conference behind the San Antonio Spurs. Once the playoffs arrived, Shaq and the Lakers went on a rampage, sweeping the Blazers, Kings, and top-seeded Spurs in one of the most dominant postseason runs in NBA history. Waiting for them in the finals were the Cinderella story Philadelphia 76ers, led by league MVP Allen Iverson, who had just survived a grueling 7-game war against the Ray Allen, Sam Cassell, Glenn Robinson-led Milwaukee Bucks, capping one of the most improbable finals runs in NBA history. The Sixers' calling card was defense, anchored by 4-time Defensive Player of the Year Dikembe Mutombo, acquired mid-season to bolster one of the league's stingiest units. On paper, this was supposed to be a coronation, a mere formality for the juggernaut Lakers. But Iverson had other plans. He erupted for 48 points in Game 1, capped off by a dagger jumper over Tyronn Lue.
followed by the now iconic step over, one of the most cold-blooded moments in finals history. However, the Philly Magic ran out after their stunning Game 1 upset. Despite Allen Iverson's relentless scoring, the 76ers simply had no answer for Shaq and Kobe, especially Shaq. Not even Dikembe Mutombo, a 4-time Defensive Player of the Year, could slow him down. The Lakers took control of the series and never looked back, winning 4-1 to capture their second consecutive championship, with Shaq claiming his second straight Finals MVP. While the Lakers entered the 2001-02 season with championship aspirations, Shaquille O'Neal's weight and mounting injury concerns loomed in the background. In a later podcast, Shaq admitted that his weight ballooned to 385 pounds during the team's second championship run.
And then had a great summer, came back 385 for the second one.
A far cry from the agile 300-pound force he was in Orlando. Despite still being the most dominant big man in the league, the wear and tear was beginning to show. He appeared in just 67 games that season as lingering foot and toe issues, made worse by the added weight, began to limit his availability. They cruised to a 58-24 record, securing the third seed in a loaded Western Conference behind the San Antonio Spurs and the top-seeded Sacramento Kings. More on them in a moment. Shaq and the Lakers took care of business in the early round, sweeping the Portland Trail Blazers and dispatching the Spurs in 5 games. A gentleman's sweep, despite Tim Duncan's best efforts. But the real test came in the Western Conference Finals. Awaiting them were the Sacramento Kings, a team the Lakers had eliminated in each of the past 2 postseasons. But this time, the Kings were vastly improved. They finished with the league's best record at 61-21 and boasted a deep, balanced roster led by Vlade Divac, Chris Webber, Mike Bibby, and Peja Stojakovic. They ran one of the most potent offenses in the league, combining speed, spacing, and unselfish ball movement. The Lakers struck first, stealing Game 1 on the road and taking home court advantage. But Sacramento responded like a veteran team, winning Games 2 and 3, and were now poised to take a commanding 3-1 series lead if they could win again in Los Angeles. The Kings came out on fire in Game 4, racing to a 20-point lead in the first quarter, but the Lakers, fueled by Shaq and Kobe, slowly chipped away. By the time the fourth quarter rolled around, they had cut the deficit to just 7. Shaq was clutch down the stretch, uncharacteristically so at the free throw line, sinking 4 straight to keep LA within striking distance. Still, with under 2 minutes left, Sacramento held a 6-point lead and looked ready to take a 3-1 series stranglehold. Then came Robert Horry. The Lakers' unsung hero buried a baseline 3 to cut the lead in half. Vlade Divac responded with a jumper from the top of the key, stretching it back to 5 with just over a minute to go. Kobe answered with a tough floater in traffic, 3-point game. After a defensive stop, Shaq knocked down 2 more clutch free throws, cutting the lead to 1 with 26.9 seconds remaining. On the next possession, Divac, normally a reliable free throw shooter, missed 1 of 2, giving the Kings a slim 2-point edge. Then came one of the most clutch buzzer beaters in NBA playoff history. Kobe drove from the top of the key and floated up a shot. No good. Shaq snagged the offensive rebound but missed the putback. In a desperate move, Divac swatted the ball out of the paint, right into the hands of Robert Horry. With time expiring, Horry let it fly. Bang! Buzzer-beating 3.
Against Christie. Kobe Bryant on the move against Christie. In for the right, flips his shot up, no good. O'Neal lays it up, missed it. Ball tipped out to Horry, a straight on 3. Good! The Lakers have won!
Game over. Series tied 2-2. Despite Horry's heroics in Game 4, the series was far from over. Sacramento responded in Game 5, reclaiming momentum with a gritty win to take a 3-2 series lead. But Shaq wasn't going down quietly. In a must-win Game 6, he delivered one of his finest playoff performances, 41 points and 17 rebounds to force a decisive Game 7 in Sacramento. Game 7 was a war. Both teams traded haymakers in what felt more like a heavyweight fight than a basketball game. The tension was palpable. The lead swung back and forth. And fittingly, the game went to overtime after Shaq missed a potential game winner at the end of regulation. In the extra period, the Lakers tightened the screws on defense. Shaq, despite earlier struggles at the line, calmly sank 2 clutch free throws and hit a tough turnaround jumper from the baseline to help seal the game. The Lakers escaped Sacramento and punched their ticket to the finals for the 3rd straight year, this time against Jason Kidd, Kenyon Martin, and the upstart New Jersey Nets. Once again, Shaq dominated.
He averaged 36 points, 12 rebounds, and 2.8 blocks per game in a 4-game sweep of an overmatched Nets team that had no answer for him inside. With that, Shaq captured his 3rd straight NBA title, marking the league's first three-peat since the Chicago Bulls did it in 1998. He also earned his 3rd consecutive Finals MVP, joining Michael Jordan as the only players in NBA history to accomplish that feat. It cemented his place among the greatest big men the game has ever seen. Despite nagging injuries and weight issues, Shaq completed one of the most dominant 3-year stretches in Finals history, a physically unstoppable force who couldn't be guarded even when opponents knew exactly what was coming. By the end of the 2001-02 season, Shaq's weight had ballooned past the 400-pound mark. While he still moved with surprising agility for a man his size, the extra weight began to take a toll on his body, particularly his feet. Ongoing toe injuries, a condition later revealed to be hallux rigidus, a form of arthritis in the big toe, became a recurring problem. The added weight only worsened the strain on his lower extremities. Shaq sat out games here and there to rest, but his conditioning was always under scrutiny, especially as the Lakers geared up for another title run.
Phil Jackson and the Lakers training staff were growing concerned. Behind the scenes, there were growing tensions between Shaq and the front office regarding his off-season conditioning. O'Neal famously said, "I got hurt on company time, so I'll rehab on company time," after delaying surgery on his toe until just before training camp. The result? Shaq missed the start of the 2002-2003 season, showing up out of shape and behind schedule. While he still produced all NBA numbers, the wear and tear was becoming harder to ignore. His explosiveness had dipped, and his defensive recovery was slower. The Shaq Diesel still had horsepower, but it wasn't running as smoothly. With Shaq sidelined early, the Lakers stumbled out of the gate, going 11-19 in their first 30 games. They eventually rallied to finish 50-32, earning the 5th seed in a brutally competitive Western Conference. They reached the second round of the playoffs, but fell to the eventual champions, the San Antonio Spurs, in 6 games, ending their run of 3 straight finals appearances. That summer, the Lakers retooled, adding aging stars Karl Malone and Gary Payton, both of whom Shaq helped recruit. On paper, the roster looked stacked, but behind the scenes, tensions were building, especially between Shaq and the Lakers front office. Shaq was seeking a contract extension with a raise, asking for $30 million per year over the remaining 3 seasons. The Lakers, concerned about his age, conditioning, and frequent injuries, hesitated. During a preseason game, an angry Shaq shouted at owner Jerry Buss, "Pay me." There were also deepening rifts between Shaq and Kobe Bryant, especially around Shaq's conditioning. In an interview with Jim Gray, Kobe publicly criticized Shaq for being out of shape, lacking leadership, and prioritizing his contract over the team. Shaq's numbers declined in the 2003-2004 season. He averaged 21 points, 11 rebounds, and 2.5 blocks. Still all-star caliber, but clearly a step down from the dominance he'd shown just a year or two prior. The cracks were widening. His weight issues were catching up to his game. This was the first clear sign of decline. Despite the off-court drama, the Lakers made it back to the finals and were heavy favorites against the Detroit Pistons, a team without a single superstar, but built on cohesion and elite defense. Anchored by Ben Wallace, who held his own against Shaq, the Pistons stunned the Lakers in a 4-1 series upset. It was one of the most shocking finals outcomes in NBA history, and it marked the end of the Shaq-Kobe era that had powered one of basketball's great dynasties.
By 2004, Shaquille O'Neal's legendary run in Los Angeles came to an uneasy end. His dominance on the court was never in question, but behind the scenes, tensions with the Lakers had reached a breaking point. That July, Shaq requested a trade, and the Lakers obliged, sending him to the Miami Heat in a blockbuster deal for Lamar Odom, Caron Butler, and Brian Grant. It marked the end of a dynasty in LA and the beginning of a new chapter in Miami. Before the move to South Beach, Shaq had explored another door, Dallas. The Lakers reportedly inquired about a trade for Dirk Nowitzki, but Mavericks owner Mark Cuban refused. Shaq later confirmed that he and Cuban had discussions, but the Mavs wouldn't part with their franchise cornerstone.
With that, Miami became Shaq's next and final major landing spot. O'Neal reverted to jersey number 32, the same number he wore in Orlando, and promised Heat fans that he would bring a championship to Miami.
Remember this, 'cause I'm gonna bring a championship to Miami, I promise.
One of the main reasons for choosing the Heat, a rising star named Dwayne Wade, whom Shaq affectionately nicknamed Flash. At the urging of team president Pat Riley, Shaq recommitted to his conditioning. According to Lakers owner Jerry Buss, he's 60 pounds lighter in Miami than he was in Los Angeles. And as you've probably gathered recently, he seems to be having some health problems. My reaction was, if he was not willing to get in shape, which he had 5, 8 years, some number of times to do, and we urged him, it seems the motivation for him to lose weight was to trade him. The result? A resurgent Shaq appeared in 73 games in his first season with the Heat, averaging 22.9 points, 10.4 rebounds, and 2.3 blocks. While no longer the 30-13 machine from his peak, Shaq remained one of the league's most impactful big men, despite nagging foot injuries and weight fluctuations. He finished second in MVP voting behind Steve Nash in one of the closest races in league history, earned his 12th straight All-Star selection, and was named first-team All-NBA. The Heat, meanwhile, flourished. They posted a 59-23 record and claimed the top seed in the Eastern Conference. Miami steamrolled through the early rounds, sweeping the Jason Kidd-led Nets and the Washington Wizards, featuring a 23-year-old Gilbert Arenas, to reach the Eastern Conference Finals. There, they faced the defending champion Detroit Pistons. With Wade and Shaq at the helm, the Heat took a 3-2 series lead and looked poised for their first NBA Finals appearance. But disaster struck in Game 5. Wade injured his rib on a crossover and further aggravated it, taking a charge from Rasheed Wallace. He was forced to sit out Game 6, which led to a blowout loss and a do-or-die Game 7.
Wade returned for the series decider, but struggled, shooting just 7 for 20 from the field. Shaq, battling a deep thigh bruise, did his part, posting 27 points, 9 rebounds, 2 steals, and 3 blocks, but it wasn't enough. The Heat fell 88-82. Their dream season ended just short of the finals. Still, Shaq saw the bigger picture. In the offseason, he signed a 5-year, $100 million extension, well below his market value, to give the Heat more financial flexibility. The move earned praise from the media and signaled his commitment to building a contender around Wade. Miami shuffled its roster, trading away Eddie Jones to the Memphis Grizzlies as part of a 5-team deal that brought in a group of experienced veterans. The Heat acquired Antoine Walker from Boston, James Posey from Memphis, and Jason Williams from the Grizzlies, all key pieces for a championship push. They also signed free agent guard Gary Payton, Shaq's former Lakers teammate, to back up Jason Williams at point guard. But disaster struck early in the 2005-06 season. In just the second game, Shaq badly sprained his ankle against Indiana and missed 18 games. The Heat stumbled out of the gate. When O'Neal finally returned, head coach Stan Van Gundy was abruptly replaced by team president Pat Riley. Some speculated that Shaq had delayed his return because of friction with Van Gundy, whom he reportedly called a front-runner and the master of panic. Riley, understanding the long-term picture, managed Shaq's minutes carefully to preserve him for the postseason. As a result, Shaq posted then career lows, 20 points, 9 rebounds, and 1.8 blocks per game, while appearing in just 59 games. Still, Shaq welcomed the reduced load. Stats don't matter. I care about winning, not stats. If I score 0 points and we win, I'm happy. If I score 50 or 60 and we lose, I'm pissed off because I knew I did something wrong. I'll have a hell of a season if I win the championship averaging 20 points a game. Miami finished the season 50-32, good enough for the second seed in the East behind the defending conference champion Detroit Pistons. In the first round, they faced an overmatched Chicago Bulls team led by Ben Gordon and Andres Nocioni. It took 6 games, but the Heat closed out the series behind Shaq's vintage 30-point, 20-rebound performance in Game 6. Next came the New Jersey Nets. After dropping Game 1 at home, the Heat regrouped and won the next 4 to take the series in 5. In the Eastern Conference Finals, they got a rematch with Detroit. With Wade healthy and Shaq hungry for revenge, Miami handled the Pistons in 6 games to punch their ticket to the NBA Finals and a showdown with the heavily favored Dallas Mavericks. Dallas looked like the superior team early, taking the first 2 games at home and smothering O'Neal, who managed just 5 points in Game 2, his lowest playoff output ever. Eric Dampier and the Mavs defense made Shaq look human. The Heat were in trouble. Then, Shaq handed over the keys. Reflecting later, he said, "We couldn't make an entry pass.
When I got it, I couldn't make my move. I was older, I was starting to feel it. It just wasn't working. And D-Wade was open a lot. So I said, hey man, what you gonna do? You wanna be a star? You wanna be like Kobe and LeBron? This is your time. That pep talk worked. Wade took over. With help from Shaq, Peyton, Walker, Williams, and a deep Heat roster, Miami stormed back to win 4 straight and capture the franchise's first NBA championship. On June 20th, 2006, Shaquille O'Neal earned his 4th and final NBA ring. He wasn't the same wrecking ball of old, averaging career lows of 13.7 points and 10 rebounds. But his presence, toughness, and leadership were still undeniable. It wasn't just a title. It was the closing act of a Hall of Fame career. From Newark to Miami, Shaq had reached the pinnacle one last time and helped build something that would outlast him. After winning his 4th championship in 2006, Shaquille O'Neal stepped off the summit, but the descent would be messy. His once dominant frame, long a weapon of destruction, began to betray him. Chronic injuries, escalating weight issues, and a souring relationship with Pat Riley came to define the final chapters of his storied career. The wear and tear started almost immediately after the Heat's title run. Shaq developed persistent foot and toe problems, worsened by a playing weight that hovered north of 350 pounds. Overuse injuries piled up, and so did the missed games. Off the court, his relationship with Pat Riley deteriorated. Riley had mandated that Shaq slim down to 10% body fat, an extreme demand for a man of his size. Shaq managed to get down to 13%, which Riley seemed to accept, as there was no public indication of fines. But the damage was done. Shaq later criticized the demand in his autobiography, saying the leaner frame made him more vulnerable to contact and stripped away his physical advantage. Tensions eventually boiled over. In one infamous incident at practice, Shaq reportedly pointed his finger in Riley's chest. Riley slapped it away. Both men exchanged profanities in front of stunned teammates. The confrontation marked the beginning of the end. By December 2007, Riley had seen enough. He traded Shaq to the Phoenix Suns. Through it all, weight remained a constant struggle. Teammates recalled Shaq being berated for his bulge, as Riley enforced strict weight policies and suspended players who showed up out of shape. Shaq later called these standards unrealistic for someone with his frame, and pointed to that disconnect as a major reason for the fallout. His final NBA stops, Phoenix, Cleveland, and Boston, felt like extended epilogues. Shaq was chasing a 5th ring to match Kobe, but his body had other plans. Injuries limited his availability, his explosiveness faded, and he struggled to evolve his game to fit an aging frame. Though he showed flashes of his former dominance, like his All-Star season in Phoenix, Shaq's presence no longer translated to championship contention. In the end, persistent calf and Achilles injuries brought Shaquille O'Neal's career to a close during his lone season in Boston. When he officially retired in 2011, he left the game as a 4-time NBA champion, a 15-time All-Star, and one of the most dominant forces the league had ever seen. But his story also served as a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the physical toll that unchecked size and inconsistent conditioning can take, even on a generational talent.
Shaquille O'Neal has always been synonymous with dominance.
As he once said, "That's going to be my legacy, the most dominant player ever." That isn't hype, it's backed by numbers. Over a 19-season NBA career, Shaq compiled 28,596 points, 13,099 rebounds, and 2,732 blocks, landing him in the top 10 all-time in scoring and blocks, and earning 15 All-Star nods, 3 Finals MVP awards, and 4 NBA championships. But beyond the stats and rings, his impact changed the league. Opponents altered defenses, teams reinforced backboards, and centers who dared guard him found themselves pushed out of the paint. His pure physicality was nearly unmatched. As Shaq discussed recently, "Nobody ever really played me straight up," reminding us that in the brutal NBA of the 1990s and early 2000s, he truly ruled the war in the paint. Yes, debates rage. Was he the GOAT? But across Reddit, sports forums, and Shaq himself, one label stands firm: the most dominant player in history. Whether with Orlando, Los Angeles, or Miami, that primal force never faded. Here's the paradox: a man built for greatness, unleashing force nightly, and yet haunted by a question: what if he actually tried?
What if Shaq had embraced conditioning the way Jordan, Kobe, or LeBron did? Phil Jackson once argued he could have been the greatest of all time if he had Michael Jordan's dedication to conditioning. Kobe agreed, "I wish he was in the gym. I would have had 12 rings." Shaq had the gifts. He had the mind. He even admitted, "I lift donuts." He didn't train as hard as he could, and critics still ask, how many championships did he leave on the table? But his legacy remains legendary. 4 rings, 15 All-Stars, 3 Finals MVPs, shattered backboards, humiliating Hall of Fame big men. He forever changed how the center position is viewed, how power is wielded, and how sheer presence can tilt the game. In the end, Shaq's story isn't just about titles, it's about possibility. He proved that natural dominance can defy expectations, yet the specter of what if will always linger, a reminder that even legends are human, capable of greatness, and still capable of more. So when you ask, what if he actually tried? Maybe there's only one answer. He was already more than enough.